Now, the BuckeyeXtra podcast with Rob Oller, Bill Rabinowitz, and Joey Kaufman from the Columbus Dispatch.
Hey, Buckeye fans, it's Joey Kaufman. I'm joined by Rob Oller and Bill Rabinowitz, breaking down Ohio State's 38-7 win over Michigan State on Saturday night. It's Sunday morning, and we're here. How are we all doing?
Let's jump in here and just let the elephant in the room. Bill is freezing. It's 85 degrees in the room, but Bill is cold.
What does it say in here?
It's a circulation issue. That's
73 degrees. 73 degrees.
73 degrees. That doesn't sound freezing to me.
So whining.
What? We're whining?
Yeah, you're whining. They come in here.
You say you're
complaining
freezing
about. I'm
not.
I'm perfectly fine.
It's just a statement. It's a statement. I would say to most people, 73 is not freezing, but. You know, it depends who,
making a joke because you thought it was boiling.
Oh, he's backing off, Joey. He's backing off. Anyhow, speaking of freezing and hot and cold.
Here's the segue.
Ohio State, Michigan State.
There we go.
The Buckeyes, hot and cold. Or maybe cold and hot, yeah. What'd you think, Joey?
More hot, more like Bill's hotel room. Overall, I thought it was a good win.
That's Ryan Day talking right there. That's what he said after the game, and he's right.
So, the first couple drives by Ohio State's defense did not look good. Michigan State averaged almost 10 yards per play those first two drives. I think the Buckeyes were fortunate. They were playing a team that was certainly capable of self-destructing with turnovers. But they adjusted after that. They made the plays. And I thought the offense overall looked really good. They scored. They put points on the board, 6 out of the first 8 drives of the game. Really good in the red zone, good pass protection against a Michigan State front that could bring pressure. And Jeremiah Smith continues to be a very good football player.
I looked at one point in the stats in the second quarter, like midway through the second quarter, and Michigan State was averaging more than 10 yards a play. I thought, what's going on here? Aiden Child had come into the game, he had thrown 7 interceptions. He, I think, completed his first 6 passes. Then Will Howard throws that pick, his really first bad play of the year, and Michigan State scores the next play. It's 10-7. You start to think, could the unthinkable happen? Could Michigan State really, threaten an upset? And then Ohio State just has so much talent. Jeremiah Smith is just, as great a receivers as Ohio State has had over the last decade. This guy is special. He is really, really special. And then on the flip side, Rob, you wrote about this. You wrote about these guys. Caleb Downs, I thought, was a huge difference maker. There were several plays that looked like this could break, and there he was.
He's legit. I think the two best players on the field, either team, are Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith. There's some other really good players, but in that game, those are the two best players. And they might be 2 of the 5 best players in the nation at their position, honestly. Caleb Downs, Joey wrote about him. The guy is he's like a pro now. He's like an NFL guy now. He's smart. He hits. I haven't seen him miss a tackle. The guy is phenomenal. And I think Joey's right. Probably what we're seeing here, we've talked about this, man, ad nauseum, but that's not going to stop me from saying it again. Teams get up for Ohio State. And I think we forget that sometimes, that first quarter, that first half, this is like their bowl game, cliche there, sorry. And they come out, ready. They're going to poke the bear. They're going to go after it.
And they scheme for it.
Huh? They scheme for it. And the next thing you know, it's a dogfight for a quarter and a half, a half, maybe into the third quarter with the better teams, although we haven't really seen that much this year. And then they just... they pull away. I think my expectations are so high, and we've nitpicked for 3 games because the opponents were so weak that I'm sort of in nitpick mode again. But at the end of the day, they're pretty good.
Yeah, to me, this was ultimately going to tell us something about Ohio State's offense because Michigan State had a good defense. They had 15 sacks coming into this game, second most in the FBS. Most advanced metrics had them as sort of a top 25 defense nationally, and that's the side of the ball where they could maybe make things disruptive and put Ohio State in bad spots, and Ohio State just moved up and down the field against them. And outside of the Will Howard interception, which, as you guys said, that was I think probably his by far his biggest head-scratching throw all season, where he tries to throw to Mekabuka in double coverage, and it's like, what are you thinking there? But outside of that, I mean, they had no trouble really with the Michigan State defense, and they probably would have scored on every touchdown on each drive. I mean, their first drive of the game was really only stalled out by an unnecessary roughness penalty by Will Kazmarek. But I mean, that to me was a revealing sign for Ohio State's offense. It showed the progress, I think, is real.
Yeah, I'll just say that I don't disagree with that. But maybe because the run game was so dominant the previous week, I thought that Judkins was okay, wasn't incredible. I thought Henderson ran hard and was pretty good. I thought the running game was good, wasn't incredible. And then the passing game, maybe I got fooled by the interception. And don't forget, he almost threw that second interception in the end zone. They hit the guy in the hand, so that was a bad throw. And just they looked a little muddy.
But he responded to those plays. I'm not
saying he didn't. I think that's the point. That gets in your head. You see that thing and you think, these guys need to be. Last week, Marshall coach, comparison to Ohio State to 2019 LSU and 20 Alabama. So we're human. That gets in your head. You expect it to just be like 50-0 every time. It's not.
Yeah, that seemed a bit much. But I think when you just compare this Ohio State offense to where they were a year ago, that's where I'm looking at it. Where they brought in Chip Kelly. They brought in Will Howard. They have new pieces on the offensive line. Quinshon Judkins in the backfield. The offense they had last year was the worst they've had in the Ryan Day era, and they've clearly taken a step forward by that. And I think this was probably a better barometer for progress than any of the non-conference games, certainly.
Fair.
Yeah, that's true. Will Howard started 12 for 13, and the one was a drop by Egbuka. He did rebound very nicely from those two throws. The one in the end zone, the next play was a fourth down play. He hit G. Scott for the touchdown. That was a nice throw. Then he let him down to the touchdown after the interception. And then about Travion, he had a 37-yard run on that drive. But I'd tell you the thing that blew me away, or at least really impressed me yesterday, was his pass protection. There was, on the one pass to, I think it was a Mecca.
The 4th and 5.
The touchdown.
He was on the right side of Will Howard, spotted the blitzer coming on the left side, and got there boom, and plowed that guy. Will Howard would have gotten decked. That never would have happened. That play never would have happened had Travion not picked up that blitzer. And he did that another time. He's done that.
Didn't he do it on the Jeremiah Smith touchdown?
That he may have. I didn't notice. And let's talk about those catches for a minute. 2 one-handed catches.
Unbelievable.
They were like Velcro to his hands. It was the first one. He said was actually better. The one by the sideline, he had to jump up and catch it. And the second one, that's when Devin Brown came in. And credit to Devin Brown, comes in immediately, makes it through. But I would say there are very few receivers in the country that would have made that catch. He reached out one-handed, caught it in stride. We were in the press box, and he's kind of like, wow, we don't do that very much.
Yeah.
Reacted to the press box. The whole press box, not just the whole press box kind of went, oh, man. On that, that just almost never happens.
Yeah, they didn't get a lot of pressure defensively, switching the other side.
Yeah.
They did not get a lot of pressure. I don't know if that's a big deal or not, as we move along here. It seems like it might be.
He still had 4 sacks, but
yeah, you're right.
But early in the game, it didn't. Aiden Childs had a clean pocket a lot of times.
He was 6 for 6 starting out. They didn't get pressure on him early on.
Took a while to get pressure, I guess.
It takes them a while to do anything. It was like,
again, they didn't have Tyleik Williams. Ryan Day said after the game he could have played an emergency. They wanted to have him have one more full week of practice, and he'll be fully healthy, supposedly. We'll see next week. He's a very good player. Pass rushing is not his forte necessarily. He can do it, but he's more effective in the run game. That was interesting. Their rushman package was Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson on the inside, along with Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau on the outside. And yeah, they eventually got pressure, but they didn't consistently. Probably the biggest defensive play of the game was on the first series when Cody Simon stuffed Childs on that 4th and 1 at the 20.
And poking the ball out. The 2
Of course.
those were huge. I don't think Michigan State wins this game, even if the breaks go their way.
Game.
But it is a game. It's a game probably into the fourth quarter.
The Buckeyes were fortunate on one of those fumbles in the first half. I can't remember who it was. Taiwan Malone with the video replays at the stadium showed it pretty clearly, but that was a face mask, and the crowd was, I think, rightly disappointed. But I don't think that can be overturned on a replay. It's a moot point at that stage. But that was clearly missed. And that was a big reason why Aiden Childs probably fumbled the football, is because his face mask was going almost 90 degrees.
Yeah, and you know what? They got some breaks. I mean, Trevion Henderson, it was the right call, I think. He fumbles. His forearm had hit the ground first on replay. Right. But that's a huge play. So anyone who says, the officials and the refs are out to get to Ohio State, well, look at this game. This was a little bit of reverse of that. I'm not saying the calls were wrong, but they went Ohio State benefited.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they call it turnover luck too, and the turnover luck certainly went their way. Although some of the guys, you have to give credit to Lathan. This is the second week in a row where Lathan Ransom forced a fumble. Last week against Marshall, it rolled out of bounds. This week it got recovered. So sometimes with turnovers, I mean, the football is a weird shape and rolls in all sorts of different directions. Sometimes it bounces your way, and sometimes it doesn't. Joey
and Bill we were driving up here yesterday. They made a great point that this season is like a ladder. They're climbing a ladder, and it couldn't set up much better. You've got these 3 non-league exhibition games, if you want to call them that. So you're building. Then you go on the road, Michigan State, not a great team, but a test. Then you come home against Iowa, better than Michigan State, really good defense, good running back. And so you're building to that Oregon game. So you had really no excuse not to be ready for Oregon, but it couldn't really set up better.
Well, we'll see.
In terms of that, I think part of it, too, is when you play these 3 teams that aren't, power forward programs, and then you play a Michigan State, which maybe isn't great, but is Big Ten talent, it can be a shock to the system, especially on the road.
Yeah, I was just surprised early in the game the way that the holes were so big for Michigan State, and the pocket was so clean for Aiden Childs. Because Michigan State's offensive line is not very good. They had lost guys to the portal, and then they had some injuries, and that was the thing. When I talked to Chris Solari from the Detroit Free Press for the podcast last week, he was saying, that was to him why he didn't think Michigan State could be competitive, because he thought Ohio State's defensive line would just crush Michigan State. So did I, and that didn't happen for a quarter and a half. The game really turned late in the second quarter when Ohio State got that stop. With about a minute to go, and then Jeremiah Smith made those 2 catches. 24-7 at half is a lot different than 17-7. So it's Michigan State getting the ball.
Right. To Joey's original point, I mean, the way Michigan State started the game, what you just said, Bill, is there any way you thought that they would have only 7 points?
No,
at the end of the day, you're looking at it, and they've got a touchdown. I mean, again, that's kind of Joey's thing. Step back, Ryan Day's thing. Look at the total yardage. Look at the end result. Of course, Bill and I are writing when the end result is playing out during the second half. So I defer to Joey on this one a little more in terms of the dynamics. Any other little minutia stuff, maybe quarterback play beyond Howard?
Well, again, the Devin Brown thing, I think that was a statement for him. That's probably the first big-time throw he's made, and that's hard to come in cold off the bench. And I kind of thought they just, hand off or whatever, make a very simple little throw, and he chucked it.
Let me jump in. I don't think it was a great throw. It was a throw that needed to be made because you had to throw it ahead of Smith. But
you had to lead him.
Anybody other than Smith doesn't make the catch.
No, you're right.
So the throw was effective.
I forget what.
But it was because the receiver.
Oh, of course.
I mean,
Marvin Harrison made Kyle McCord look good last year.
Exactly. Yeah. Great for Brian. I mean, he needed that. Ryan Day, praised him after the game. So did the players.
Will Howard.
Will Howard really, talked him up. But you're right, Bill. That was kind of a turning point right there.
It was. You mentioned, Bill, that they aired it out instead of handing the ball off. I mean, that was 3rd and 10 at the 17. That's a long way to go to the sticks. So it would have been very easy for them to just play for a field goal in that situation. But I think to Ryan Day's credit for the most part. Depends how you want to look at it. They've been very aggressive, I think, this season so far, especially on fourth down. They went for it 4 times. They got it 3 times at Michigan State. The 2 really big ones went for touchdowns with Will Howard, where you had the first one where it was 4th and goal at the 3. He's nearly picked off on 3rd down. They put the ball in his hands on 4th and goal. He finds G. Scott on the underneath route for a score. Then there was a 4th and 5 in the 3rd quarter where he goes to Mekabuka on that crossing pattern that goes for a score. They have not been hesitant to go for it on 4th down this year. I think I was looking it up last night, but they've gone for it, I believe, 10 times on 4th down this year. They went for it 18 times on 4th down. All 18 times all of last year, so they're already more than halfway there. They've been eager to go for it in those situations. And I wondered that some of that is with Chip Kelly as the play caller. Now they talked about he's more focused on game management and that sort of thing, and maybe that's a result of that.
I would think that though that Ryan Day would be the one to make the decision whether to go for it on 4th down, not Chip Kelly.
He is, but Day said he's more focused on game management. Yeah. Now he's no longer the play caller. So when you have those duties split up, maybe you're more conscious of go for it on 4th down rather than just if you're the play caller and in charge of game management, you're reflexively just going to punt. That just.
Maybe.
Let's talk about what you didn't notice yesterday.
What I didn't.
What no one's talking about, and what you didn't notice, which is positive for Ohio State, the bugaboo of special teams.
Kickoffs.
The week before, I don't think a kickoff went out of bounds.
No, they were all touchbacks.
Yeah, and fielding was, he made a field goal, made the extra points. The punt return, they haven't broken one, but there was no fumble. I'm just throwing that out there because they improved in that area significantly.
One more thing about the 4th down stuff. I think a lot of that's analytics. I think that they've kind of dived into that a little bit more. It's not the first year they've done it, but I think that's part of it. I thought I was telling early in the game, it was 4th and 1 at their own 40, I think. Ohio State's own 40, and they went for it. Will Howard just quarterback sneak, and it does help to have a quarterback who's 235 pounds.
We saw that.
And is willing to do it.
The other way.
Right, who's willing to do it. So I think that they have a lot of confidence in doing that, and I think that's good. I think it builds confidence in your team, and especially when it's successful. The one that didn't work was that was a weird one. It was the end of the game. Julian saying he was trying to kill the clock essentially, or get a 4th down to. I don't know why they didn't run it on 4th and 1 or whatever it was, and he threw it deep, and it was so.
But it might have been an RPO.
Maybe, but so the one time they didn't convert 4th and 1 was a meaningless one. It didn't matter if they had that.
What did you think?
Before we transition to saying the thing that's I think in the back of everybody's minds, I'm sure on 4th down was they're going for it on 4th down now early this season. They didn't late last season against Michigan because there was a 4th and short on their side of the 50, and they didn't go for it in those spots. And this sort of.
I agree. Although Michigan's defense had something to do with that.
You're talking about right before halftime of the Michigan game, right?
Right. And there were opportunities for them to go for it on 4th and short against Michigan.
I remember you were animated on that one, Joseph.
I wasn't animated about it. But
he was crying.
he was just bawling. Sobbing.
He was bawling.
Sobbing. Just a sob story.
Just totally dejected.
Saying... He's obviously the guy. Well, I was going to say I shouldn't say obviously the guy next year, and we don't want to jump ahead too much. But he looked okay, I guess.
I thought it was more telling that Devin Brown started the 4th quarter and then only played half the 4th quarter. That Sayin got in there earlier than you would think for a typical.
It was 8 minutes in the game when Sayin went in.
So it was half and half, and honestly, I was writing a lot of it, so I was looking up. He looked fine. He didn't do anything great. Didn't do anything bad.
Yeah, I mean
but he's so smooth. You can tell he's smooth. He's kind of got a nice throwing motion.
Yeah,
you can see that. It doesn't seem to be kind of overwhelmed by the moment.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say in quarterbacks is Howard. I just keep banging on this is that he still doesn't look off receivers. Now maybe I'm expecting too much. And,
who's he?
Howard. Will Howard. When you watch him, he drops back. He looks left. He's throwing left. He's although he looks left a lot. But I think you take, all things being equal, he is giving you what you want. And I think because he has the running ability and his size to get the 4th and 1, Bill talked about it, that first down, because his personality is pretty upbeat.
Yes.
And I think he's getting the benefit of the doubt, and I also think, in a way, he's McCord with better running ability.
He's a better...
I'm not sure he's a better pure passer.
No. I think McCord might be a better... But I think that's an interesting thing. There's always going to be these comparisons. We're running these stories that are comparing.
So it's a new era of college football.
What
with
it
instant
is.
Transfers. The guy's right there. Yeah.
I put it this way. I think that it was that whole thing we've talked about is a win-win for both. McCord is happier and better off at Syracuse, and Ohio State, which would have been happy to have McCord back, is more than happy to have Will Howard be their quarterback.
I wonder. I think to me, Will Howard looks like a great fit in this Ohio State offense. But you have to keep in mind that it was originally going to be a pairing with Will Howard and Bill O'Brien. I think the pairing with Will O'Brien and Chip Kelly is ideal, but they didn't know they were going to get that right away.
Good point.
Because what I think makes Will Howard a great fit for what they're doing right now is they're not having him do 5 of these 7-step drops and having him go deep a ton. He only had one pass of 20 air yards or more against Michigan State on Saturday. So they're continuing to do a lot more dink and dunk and quick game and one read stuff and screens and quick stuff out of the RPO, and that's good because he's much more of a threat to run. So it's more meaningful when you run RPOs with him because he could pull it and run, and he's also, I think, a good decision maker in that. But if there's no Chip Kelly, maybe they don't. It just would have been interesting how the offense would have been maybe different with Bill O'Brien, and maybe they would have had him do different. So to me, it's a good fit for Kelly, but they kind of lucked out in that situation.
Yeah, I agree.
There were a couple of plays yesterday, we said to each other when they happened, that's a Chip Kelly play.
Yeah.
The wide receiver reverse that Jeremiah Smith scored on, I think, was a Chip Kelly play.
Although they did run something similar last year with Marvin Harrison Jr. in the end around against Michigan State.
Well, that's Chip Kelly calling in from UCLA.
Yeah. But there were certain formations and certain ways that they have to look.
They ran the pitch where Howard rolled right.
They dressed stuff up well with Chip.
Yeah. There were certain things that I've not seen that from an Ohio State offense before, and obviously Ryan Day's been there quite a while. Just a couple, nothing.
That's all. You just need wrinkles.
And who knows how much they're saving for the Oregons, Penn States,
Howard
and
talked about it right after the game. He said, "There's so much more that we could." I think he thought I'd like to have run those plays, but we didn't. We won without running those plays. So they're still in the bag.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting moving forward. I wrote today that they're going to have to get faster starts when they play against really good teams. But then I'm thinking, well, who are the really good teams? I guess again we're jumping.
Oregon?
Yeah, I think so. I think Oregon.
They've gotten it together. They beat UCLA soundly. UCLA is obviously not very good, but they beat them soundly. Oregon's first 2 games were very shaky.
Yeah.
And then they beat Oregon State badly, and they seem to have righted the ship. Iowa's going to be a challenge because Iowa makes you earn everything.
Yeah.
They just don't give you anything.
I just don't think they have the offense.
No, I agree with you.
Right, yeah. I think we could be looking at a similar score, honestly.
I don't think if they score 38 against Iowa, that'll be more impressive.
Right now, they are scheduled to face 3 unbeaten teams in the Big Ten: Oregon, Penn State, and anybody want to guess the last one?
Indiana.
The Hoosiers. And then Michigan. So, there are... And Nebraska's a one-loss team.
Michigan's not undefeated.
Well, not in the Big Ten.
Oh, in the Big Ten. Okay.
No.
Oh, we listened to the Michigan game. Let's just give 2 minutes on Michigan. We heard Michigan plays Minnesota. They're up 21-0. Minnesota comes back. They have it. They score, and then they kick the onside. We saw the replay.
Yeah, it was not. That was a bad call. It was not. It was not offside.
Can you imagine if Minnesota gets that call, which they should have, and then scores and wins? Can you imagine?
They needed a field goal to tie.
But they had 45 seconds. They would have gotten the ball midfield-ish, whatever it would have been.
There's 2 ways to look at this, Bill, and I agree with you. But the other side is, old Michigan, former Michigan, pre the cheating, loses that game, maybe. And so they won the game. I think Michigan's got a little bit of edge still. Maybe not what they had, but I think Michigan defensively in the trenches, on the line, they're not what they were last year, but they're still dangerous. I would just say they're still dangerous.
Of course.
What Michigan has to be concerned about is, are those quarterbacks going to improve? And I didn't watch enough of the game to see if they were any good yesterday. Yeah, right. But if they don't improve, game over. I'm not saying the game.
Yeah.
I am always hesitant to predict that game until the week of. But they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, you can't go anywhere in college football these days with an passing game. Yep. Can't do it.
I will be curious to see how Michigan State does against Michigan in a few weeks, because I think Michigan State looks improved.
They're better than I thought they'd be.
Yeah.
They are.
I thought I had them originally in the Big Ten power.
Big Rob Oller.
Check those out.
Rob Oller.
I had them last by a lot, and they're not the worst team. Purdue is.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were better. They were better than I thought.
This was the most competitive Ohio State Michigan State had been since 2019, because the Mel Tucker teams were just completely
he was busy,
blown out.
He was busy doing other things.
I was. I looked up before the game. I mean, the scoring margin in the last 5 games was ridiculous. The Ohio State won 8 in a row.
Wasn't it like 197 to 46? Something.
I put my laptop away. Sorry, but
it was ridiculous.
Yeah, and so this was. Look, the score was misleading. This was a much more competitive game, certainly for most of the first half. If not for those turnovers, it could have been an entirely different game. It was a real dogfight.
I'll end my part with this. The epitome of what happened yesterday, microcosm, if you want to call it, big word that we don't really understand, but we like to throw these words out.
You don't understand that word?
Well, I understand the word. Okay. Is Emeka Egbuka. This is Ohio State. He has 2 drops. He has 2 drops pretty early,
right,
and then finishes with 9 catches and some spectacular stuff. That's Ohio State. Start kind of clunky. What's going on here? Finish really strong. That's his game. Was Ohio State through 4 games.
I think, Joe, you've used the car analogy of like were they a Maserati or a Ferrari or something. They're a little bit like that. It's like, okay, they're clunky, getting out of the driveway, okay, and then you get on the highway, and boom, they're off.
Yep.
Better that way than you going fast out of your driveway that you crash.
Well, that's true.
They went really fast out of the cul-de-sac, and then as soon as they got on the main road, they just fell into the ditch.
Right, yeah. Well, on to Iowa.
Should be a good one. 3:30 kick. CBS. Ohio State's going to wear gray uniforms.
That dark gray, kind of that darkish gray.
The ones they wore last year is Michigan State.
Not a huge fan, but better than the all black.
It's part of the. At least it's used the scarlet and gray. So
exactly.
It's at least gray is part of the
gray
school colors. So that does it. That was Rob Oller, Bill Rabinowitz. I'm Joey Kaufman. Thanks for listening to our latest edition of the Buckeye Extra Football Podcast. Be sure to visit us at dispatch.com for coverage of the Buckeyes throughout the week as we segue into looking ahead to the Iowa game.
Be sure and subscribe to the Buckeye Extra Podcast in the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on Stitcher.